Welcome inside episode 497 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountain on a Senators game day. Ottawa travels to Buffalo tonight to take on not only the Sabres, but also the greatest goalie in franchise history.
Yeah, thank God it's not Aaron Dell we're seeing again, Ross. Nobody wants to see that. And it's going to be interesting to see how they do. This is the third and final matchup against the Sabres, 1-1 tied series. So let's hope the Senators can wrap this one up.
Full preview of tonight's game, including locked on player, a lookout player, keys to a Senators victory, and maybe we'll reminisce about Craig Anderson's time in goal for the Ottawa Senators. Also, Pierre Dorion was in Winnipeg last night, scouting the Minnesota Wild again. Who could he be interested there? And more injury updates, and it's a positive one. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.
Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Thursday, February 17th. And Pilsy, it was almost 2 years ago to the day that the Ottawa Senators retired the number 4 for Chris Phillips against the Buffalo Sabres. Now they go up against the greatest goalie in franchise history. I'm going to put it right to you right away. Should the Senators consider retiring number 41 one day?
I mean, retiring, that's a big one. I would say for sure, Ring of Honor. I think maybe if Andy had won a cup here, then you could definitely say retire the number. But I don't think it's quite enough to have number 41 retired. But if it happened, I would not be upset or I would not argue it, that's for sure. But Ring of Honor, 100%, Anderson deserves that.
Yeah, I think so as well. Ring of Honor is the perfect spot. Almost made for him, right? Him and Brian Murray. Ironically, Brian Murray, you could argue his best trade was bringing in Craig Anderson for Brian Elliott. He found a starting goalie for 10 years. Craig Anderson played 435 regular season games with Ottawa, another 40 in the playoffs. My favorite stat is his playoff save percentage, .928. This guy was always a gamer in goal, played an old school style. Love watching him, but I hope he gets lit up tonight. I'll say it.
Hey, I mean, that's fair. You gotta trust your allegiance and stick with the Sens. But Anderson's been having a decent season for the Sabres, especially with how that team's looked, and he's getting up there in age, and he's had that injury to deal with. So he's their best goalie easily. So they're putting their best foot forward here, and the Sens are going to have a challenge ahead of them. That's for sure.
Craig Anderson, 6-3 this season with a .916 save percentage. Again, only 9 games played, but he's back now from injury and sitting at 297 wins, Pilsy. If it was already at 299, maybe I'd be a little more, nice story and all that. But I do hope and believe that he will get to that awesome milestone. Not a whole lot of goalies are at 300 wins. If you had to guess how many goalies are at 300 or more wins in NHL history, what do you think the number would be at?
20?
You're going to say 20?
Yeah.
Wow. No, close, but I mean, it's still a very, very exclusive club. 38 goalies in NHL history have reached 300 wins. Thomas Vokoun is the one at 300. Nice. So just to kind of set the milestone up after that. So, hey, it's huge for Craig Anderson. I'm excited to see him in goal. As we said, always a fan favorite. What's your favorite Andy memory of his time with the Sens?
I would say it's got to be when he came back for that first game after his wife, Nicole. She had a lot of health problems with her cancer struggle, but she battled back and is doing great now, which we love to hear. But he spent a lot of time away from the game to be with her. And I think all Sens fans, I speak for all Sens fans, when we all appreciated that and said, of course, you got to do that. And then when he came back, he got a shutout, didn't he, against the Islanders?
No, Edmonton, 2-0 shutout, 37 saves, 18 of those saves in the third period. And do you remember Cam Talbot came out on the bench for the 3 stars? That was a nice moment there, too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, the whole league was rooting for this guy at that point. It wasn't just Sens fans. Like, it was just a good story that was really inspiring. And for him to, his first game back, dominate like that, it's pretty incredible. So, Craig Anderson, we love him on this show. He's always exciting to watch with the old school saves. And he's the greatest goalie in Senators franchise history. There's no debate about that.
No, there really isn't. I think he took over that crown probably somewhere in 2017, right?
Yeah.
When he was, let's be honest, they probably don't win even that first round series without Craig Anderson's brilliance. A few of those games, how many? 3 of them went to overtime? I mean, you need great goaltending to win when you're only winning games by 1 goal. So, yeah, for me, Craig Anderson, I agree. Like, that shutout was super emotional. How about with Nicole in the crowd in in Boston tonight, Buffalo, in Boston during that playoff series? That was a nice emotional moment. I believe it was the game 6, the one where they clinched it. She was in the crowd there, and the cameras loved her too. And she was, I don't know if she was living up to the camera or she's just a goalie wife, right? They live and die by every save, but
Definitely.
She was as intense as probably the players in that game. So great family, great goalie, excited to take him on tonight. And we'll get into the lineups a little bit later on in the show. So Ottawa let Craig Anderson walk 2 summers ago, but now they've got a decision to make to add, it looks like, to the team with Pierre Dorion going on another scouting trip. I tried to line him up to come to the King's Head after the game. Didn't want to. That's all right, Pierre. But all that to say, he seems to have something about the Minnesota Wild. Do you have any idea of who he could be targeting?
I mean, it's interesting that the Wild is the team that he's targeting, because that's a team that is going to need to clear cap space. We all know about the buyout penalties for Suter and Parise that they have coming up. It's massive. But you're in the midst of being one of the best teams in the NHL, so you don't want to destroy your roster here. I think the player that most people are talking about is Kevin Fiala. He's only got 1 year left on his deal at 5.1. He's restricted free agent after. He's 25 years old. He would be the winger that could fit in the Sens top 6. But if you're Minnesota, you're not trading this guy for draft picks. So I really don't know what kind of deal they're concocting here. Another guy that I would be interested in, Ross, is Marcus Foligno. He's got 3 years left at 3.1. That is a Senators type player. Like,
oh yeah,
we had Nick Foligno was on the Sens, and he was great when he was here. But Marcus Foligno plays that tough style game, and I could see DJ Smith really liking that. But also, he's in his 30s and is a bottom 6 guy.
Yeah.
Is that who you're targeting? I'm not sure, but he's someone that I looked at and was like, man, he would look great in a Sens uniform.
Yeah, if they wanted some short-term help, I mean, Victor Rask, if you're looking at a cap dump type move, then he's making $4 million expiring this year, and maybe he's a guy that you can take on and also at the same time get something in terms of strengthening your team, and maybe they're looking elsewhere to add, because this is why it doesn't make sense, where it's like they're going to be a buyer, but why would Pierre Dorion then be scouting the NHL team, right? Wouldn't they be scouting Iowa and the players that they have in their system rather than the NHL roster? Because the youngest players on this NHL roster, like Matt Boldy's not going anywhere. That kid is an absolute star in the making. And beyond that, like Connor Dewar, maybe Brandon Duhaime, maybe again. But outside of those guys, like the youngest player on their team is Gabriel Kaprizov. He's 24. And beyond that, it's just a bunch of like hard-nosed vets and guys who are in their mid-20s, late 20s. And I just don't know if there's a fit. I mean, last offseason, we were excited about Matt Dumba, right? But Dumba's been out. He hasn't even played in these 2 games. So you're not going to Winnipeg to scout a guy who's not playing.
Exactly. And Ross, one of the main reasons the Wild put themselves through that buyout hell is to keep Dumba, right? Because there was a whole situation where Suter, he had his no move clause or whatever. So no matter what, he's automatically protected. So they said, okay, we're going to scratch that so we don't have to protect Suter. Buy him out. Now we can protect Dumba. So I don't think they would go through all of that just to end up trading Dumba.
Yeah, I think like Kevin Fiala is the natural guy here, but they need him. Like he's been one of their best players this year.
A roster player would have to go back the other way, and who's going back the other way? I don't know who Minnesota would want, like Tierney, Ennis.
No.
Like I don't.
No, like those aren't guys who have any value. Like it would have
Exactly.
to be a Nick Paul or a Connor Brown, I'd imagine.
And
Like,
Connor Brown's not going
but
anywhere.
those would be the guys who Minnesota would be
Nick
targeting.
Paul, actually, that would make a lot of sense. Because
I mean,
that's a low cap
more.
hit, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
have to add more.
definitely, yeah. But I don't. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But it seems like Dorion's like he's really got them in his sights. Like that's the number one team he's scouting right now.
Yeah, certainly is. And when it comes to Kevin Fiala, I think all Sens fans, like I'm sure people just smash their steering wheel, being like, "No, I love Nick Paul." Kevin Fiala is back-to-back 20-goal scorer and neither full season, right? And this year he's got 37 points in 45 games. He's an offensive weapon. He's a type of player that the Sens would absolutely covet. He's a left shot, but plays the right wing at times. Also left wing, but we know Ottawa's more deep there. If he did come to Ottawa, you would assume he'd come in and play the right side. Yep. But I can't get a grip on what the return would be, what the situation be, or if they're just waiting until summer and maybe that's a deal you make as a pending RFA with a contract in place. But then the other side of it is, what would the contract look like on a guy whose qualifying offer is going to be over $5 million? Yeah. He's going to want a long-term deal. It's a complex situation if they are going to make something work here with the Minnesota Wild, but I'm not against it, because if you're going to give, you're going to get a good player back in Kevin Fiala, if that is in fact the target.
Well, and the thing, too, that's interesting, Ross, is if this was a summer deal like you're talking about, and let's say, that lowers the value, basically you're just buying his rights, right? As an RFA, his contract's over in the summer, you're just buying his rights. You got to wonder why Dorion's so focused on that now, when there's guys like Zach Sanford, Nick Paul, Anton Forsberg, guys that he needs to move at the deadline. Like, really, that should be your top priority right now, is trying to find a home for those guys rather than trying to find something that is a summer deal. So this whole thing is really interesting, and I have no clue what direction is being taken here.
Whoa, are you officially on Team Trade Nick Paul?
No. I am not officially on Team Trade Nick Paul. I want to sign him, but we talked about it in a couple episodes ago. If he's looking for more than $3 million, that's when you start saying, all right, what direction are we going here? Because you don't want to end up like the Vancouver Canucks and have bottom six guys making $3 million each.
Yeah, but man, is he ever a good player. And he plays that Minnesota Wild style too. I could see them really targeting him. But if there's a contract extension that can be signed, clearly my favorite play would be to keep Nick Paul, so that we don't find ourselves talking on this show, Pillsy, about having to get another one once he's gone. All right, a little more on that and a full preview of tonight's game after a quick word from our friends at BetOnline. It might be over for football season, but BetOnline.net has way more odds on everything else in the sporting world, from scores, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coaches will land. BetOnline is the #1 spot for all things betting in 2022. And it's not just it. BetOnline.net has basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC odds as well. They're the best in the business, from sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is your #1 online wagering destination. BetOnline, they've got the greatest odds. You got to check them out. It's the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline.net, where the game starts. All right, Pillsy. So the Ottawa Senators are taking on the Buffalo Sabres tonight in what is a battle for 6th in the Atlantic Division, as the Buffalo Sabres sit 2 points ahead. Or sorry, 1 point. Is it 1 point? It's 2 points. I was right the first time. 2 points ahead, with the Senators having 2 games in hand. So if you're going just even by points percentage, though, the Sabres have a little bit of a boost because they've got those 8 overtime and shootout losses. Ottawa has 4 there. The Sabres have won their last 2 games. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10. We'll preview that in a little bit. I'm just curious. I want to get back to the trade talk a little bit because people love it. And not just Minnesota, but what would you be hoping the Sens to bring in at the trade deadline or before? Like, is a Kevin Fiala type player what you'd be targeting, like a mid-20s, top 6 guy? Or are you more so looking at getting picks and prospects and the classic rebuild type trades?
Personally, I would say the Sens should be going the route of just cleaning out their cupboard. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have any interest in bringing Sanford back, and it doesn't sound like that's a mutual agreement on either side, then focus on trading him. Chris Tierney, focus on finding a spot for him. Anton Forsberg, focus on finding a spot for him. And it's not because I'm like, we need draft picks. Like, those days are done. Like, sure, you can never have too much draft capital. It adds value, and you can use those to sweeten trade packages and stuff. But mostly, like Dorion said, you want to know what kind of roster you're going to have for next season. So file out all the guys that aren't going to be here, don't want to be here, don't make sense long term. Do that for the trade deadline. Come the draft, I think that's when you go for a Fiala, a Keller. I mean, it depends on where Giroux's at, a Giroux type guy. Like, I think the draft is when you go for those big home run plays. That's when they acquired Matt Murray, right? Yeah. I think that's when teams are more likely to want to move guys like that. And if they have certain intel that guys on their board are available, then they want to load up on draft picks so they can draft their guys. I think that makes more sense. And plus right now, like, adding Kevin Fiala, it kind of wouldn't make sense, because then you're just adding more firepower to this team and you're lessening your chance of having a good draft pick in the draft lottery. Not that that's everything, but if that's the route you're going, then why ruin those chances even more? So I really think they need to be focusing on getting the UFAs, finding them homes, and then in the summer, that's when you make a big swing.
So the TSN trade bait board comes out every year, and this week they updated it. It was just Valentine's Day on Monday, Pillsy. So let's play a little matchmaking. I'm going to run through this real quick, but you tell me on a scale of whatever you'd like, maybe like very interested, not at all. Tell me what you think the Sens position should be, in your opinion, on these players. So number one, Jacob Chychrun, 3 years left at 4.6. Does the position not make sense there for him?
A lot of things make sense except the price tag. The price tag is going to be absolutely massive to acquire Chychrun, and you got Sanderson coming up the pipes. Brandstrom's starting to look good. We've seen glimpses of Lassie Thompson and JBD. I don't think that's quite necessary. Would I want Jacob Chychrun on this team? Absolutely, and he's on a good contract, young, big defenseman, but I just think the price doesn't make sense, and the Sens aren't in a position to be like, if we acquire a Jacob Chychrun, we're set, and we're ready to contend for a Stanley Cup. They're not there yet. Whereas other teams, they're in that position and they're seeing a young defenseman signed to a good contract, and they're like, we don't care about our draft picks. We need this guy now. So for me, I would say not very interested, like a 2 out of 5 on the interest scale.
All right. I'm going to skip the next few guys like Ben Chirot, Marc-Andre Fleury, Claude Giroux. No. They're not guys who are going to come here. Even John Klingberg, I'm going to skip. Dallas, I don't think they're
John Klingberg's next contract is going to be a mammoth contract.
And probably not worth what you're getting. 1 goal, 25 points for what's known as an offensive defenseman. I mean, the points are all right, but all that to say, Thomas Hertl, I think he'd be a guy in the summer that could be interesting as a UFA, because he's still that kind of younger level, 28 years old. Like, he could fit in with a core. Here's a name I'll throw at you for fun, and I think some Sens fans are going to hate this, but what do you think about Max Domi?
How's he been doing in Columbus? I don't think that hot, eh?
21 points in 35 games, playing on a pretty bad team, right? Okay. Last year was tough for him. He only had 24 points in 54. Now, he's definitely going to be better than that, but he's not the player that put up 28 goals in Montreal.
That's the thing. I would say not very interested. I mean, I think the Sens already have guys like him available, and they need someone who is solely there to score goals. Like, they need a sniper, someone fast that can play with Timmy and Formanton. So I would say not very interested on that one either.
I've got one here that, for me, moves the needle a little bit. What about Andrew Kopp out of Winnipeg? Kind of that Sens style where it's more of a grinding type, but he would add some depth down the middle here as a guy who's a lot different style than the centers that the Sens have coming up in the system.
I would say he's your Nick Paul replacement. If you don't get Nick Paul done, Andrew Kopp's your guy.
But so Andrew Kopp's making 3.64 and about to be a UFA. So is Nick Paul using that guy as a measuring stick?
Kopp's got a little more offense, though, right?
Yeah, a little. Yeah, 28 points for sure. I can't even say a little bit. 12 goals, more than double. Or no, Nick Paul's at what, 9 now?
He's at 9 now. Yeah, but I mean, with the elevated role, like if Nick Paul had stayed where he's supposed to, I don't think he's racking up those points.
Here's one that I think might move the needle as well. And what's interesting about this player is he's an RFA at the end of this season as well, not UFA. And it's a name that's been thrown around, Jake DeBrusk.
Yeah, Jake DeBrusk is interesting. I think he's someone that there's a lot of untapped potential there. I think he's fallen out of favor in Boston, and I think that's created a bit of a riff in a relationship there. So I would be interested in Jake DeBrusk, yeah, but I think Jake DeBrusk is your Colin White replacement, right? If the Sens buy out Colin White,
you know what?
They're very similar type players, right?
We keep saying buy out Colin White. If Colin White comes back on February 26th, that's a month before the deadline. Maybe he's a guy that Minnesota would target in a bottom 6 role.
I don't think so because they have cap problems and
going forward. I mean, they could buy him out after this year, but get a free run at him for the playoffs.
I don't think, can they buy out another player? Like, haven't they hit isn't there a buyout limit?
Oh, maybe.
So I don't know if they'd be able to do that. And yeah, I don't think that's a move that they would be interested in.
Do you think that Colin White could have some trade value if he does come back and play decent?
It's tough to say just because of his injury problems, right? To have those injury problems so young and to his only good season was so long ago and playing beside Mark Stone. I don't think there would be a lot of interest unless the Sens were going to retain salary.
Right. And would you do that with 4 years left on a contract? Probably not.
Probably not. And I want to be clear here. The only reason the idea of buying out Colin White is so enticing is because of that clause that you would only have to pay 1/3 of it out rather than the normal amount. If it was the normal amount, I think maybe you're thinking harder about it. But this is the one time you can cash in on that 1/3 amount, which for Colin White would make a lot of sense. But he seems to be a glue guy in the room, so I don't think that would be a popular decision for the boys.
Right, like we've talked about it before on this show with lots of guys, including Angus Crookshank and Thomas Chabot here. I'm on Cap Friendly. I'm trying to find his buyout. You know how you can buy out contracts on there because it doesn't barely affect at all. Buyout current contract right here. The Senators cap hit if they bought out Colin White, who has 4 years left, at 4.75. 3 years left after this one. 875,000, 875,000. Then they'd save 625,000, and then you'd have to add 3 more years after at 875,000. So that barely moves the needle in terms of the $82 million salary cap.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair, but when you got to start thinking ahead to the future, right, Ross? Like, Norris is coming up here. Stützle's coming up. Formanton's coming up. Sanderson's only starting his entry-level deal, so I won't include him there. But those are 3 big ones. Norris, Stützle, and Formanton. Like, you got to have a lot of money left over for those guys. So I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. But what's going to be great is seeing Colin White back in a Ottawa Senators jersey. He's back at practice in Pilsy. Another injury update as well. Josh Norris is back skating, so no surgery on his shoulder. That's great news. But please, 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 please tell me they learned their lesson with Shane Pinto. Don't let the player tell you he's feeling good enough to play. And then we might see him excel when he gets back. Obviously, it's a huge hole. He's the #1 center on this team. But if he's not 1,000%, same goes for Thomas Chabot. I don't want them anywhere near this lineup when they're fighting, like I said, for 6th place in the division.
That's just the thing, right? Like, what are we doing if we're rushing these guys back soon? Like, I kind of understood it at the start of the season because, you know, there's so much runway left. You don't want to keep skidding like they did in November. But at this point in time, it just doesn't make sense. And DJ Smith reiterated that with Thomas Chabot, saying there's absolutely no chance he's coming back early. So I think the same would be said for Norris. But it's great to see he's on the ice skating. That's a good improvement for sure.
Yeah, funny. Minnesota Wild fans were quick to reply to the tweet that Michael Russo put out saying that that Pierre Dorion was in there, and they said if they want Fiala, it better be Norris or Batherson coming the other way. And then one of them said, no, that wasn't enough. And then another one was like, oh, Batherson was available before the season. What? Wait, after he signed the 6-year extension?
For less than $5 million? Yeah, I don't think so.
Less than $5 million. Nice. We're still waiting for Drake Batherson to be back. Always great seeing him around the rink, though. He was, again, on the bench with Thomas Chabot watching practice yesterday. At practice, the lines were as following. No morning skate today, I should add, as well as the Senators are in Buffalo to get ready for a date with the Sabres. Nick Paul between Brady Tkachuk and Connor Brown. Tim Stützle between Alex Formenton and Adam Gaudette. Dylan Gambrell between Parker Kelly and Austin Watson. And the fourth line of Tierney, Sanford, and Ennis. On defense, it's Brandstrom and Josh Brown, Holden and Zub, Mete and Zaitsev, and we think Philip Gustafsson's going to start tonight. He was the only goalie at practice yesterday. Anton Forsberg feeling under the weather, not COVID-related. And Matt Murray still out with an upper body injury. Pilsy, are you thinking we're going to see Gus tonight?
I think it's going to be Gus. Yeah, I'd be surprised if they went Forsberg, especially after he had to come into a game cold and then wasn't feeling good enough to practice. Like, I'd be very surprised. And if you're going to toss Gustafsson into a game, the Buffalo Sabres is a good time to do that. So I think we're probably going to see Gus here. He's been playing better down in Belleville, although the AHL is not a friend of Philip Gustafsson. His numbers down there for some reason are hardly ever any good, but he's been playing better this year.
We should say, just set the Belleville Senators franchise record for wins all time. I think it was 36.
I think the tie was 36. Now he's at 37. Yep.
So in terms of the NHL, that hasn't really been his friend recently either. Since the win against Pittsburgh on November 13th, he's got the Matt Murray stat line, Pilsy. And I hate to say it, but he's 0-5-0 with an .859 save percentage in his last 5 games. What would you hope to see out of Philip Gustafsson tonight to give you a little more confidence in him going forward? Because he started the year, he was great. He's got 5 games this year where he's got an over .940 save percentage in them. But then the other ones are just stinkers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But Philip Gustafsson, this is kind of similar to what we talked about with Matt Murray last season. A lot of his bad starts and poor numbers are a result of poor team play, right? You can't put all of that on Gustafsson. Like when Gustafsson was getting those starts, the team was absolutely garbage at that time. Although, hey, you're responsible for your own play as well, but I think that's just something to take a look at. So really what I want to see from Gustafsson is start strong, Ross. We've talked about this before. We've seen Gustafsson where he has a poor start, he lets in a bad goal, and then he just crumbles. So start strong, have a really good first period, get a couple good saves in, and then keep your team in this game. Like Buffalo, even though the Sens have all these injuries, this is a very beatable team. Like you look up and down the roster, which we'll look at very soon here. There's a lot of holes where you can beat this team. So I think Gustafsson does have a good chance here, and I hope for his sake that he can have a good game to kickstart this new NHL season. Like basically, let's give him a clean slate because he hasn't played in a long time. So clean slate, new season. It's 2022, new year, new Gus. Let's see what he can do in the NHL.
And what about the skaters? What are you noticing from this lineup that you're going to follow through tonight's game?
Well, the biggest thing I'm noticing, Ross, is Parker Kelly up there on the big shutdown line with Gambrell and Watson. So if you're Parker Kelly, you got to feel good about yourself that DJ Smith has put you in a position that he really trusts you in, because normally it'd be Sanford in that spot, right? Sanford, Gambrell, Watson. We've seen that a bunch since Nick Paul has had to move off that line. So if you're Parker Kelly and your peer, Mark Kaslick, was the guy that got sent down, not you. So you got to be feeling good that you earned that spot.
Since this most recent call-up for Parker Kelly, his ice time is way up from the last call-up when he played in San Jose, in Anaheim, was under 10 minutes in both those games, played 11 against Washington, 11 against the St. Louis Blues, of course, getting his second goal of the season in what was his 13th game. I'm surprised, actually, that number is as high as it is. 13 games this year for Parker Kelly. I could have sworn it was closer to 8 or 9, but that to say, 3 hits, 2 block shots, against St. Louis. He's going to have to bring more of that defensive acumen for tonight's game. I like that line too with Gambrell and Watson. There'll be tasks going up, I'm sure, against the number one line on the Buffalo Sabres. For me, should we do our locked on players right now, or should we ease into it and get into the Sabres first?
No, well, we got the lines up. Let's do our locked on players here.
All right, go ahead, Pills.
All right, I'm going to go with, let's go Nick Paul. Like, this is still a big assignment for him. I think the Tkachuk-Paul Brown line is a really nice line, and I think they all kind of complement each other. They've been playing hot lately, so I want to see what Nick Paul can do, because he's going to be going up against the Sabres' number one centerman is Tage Thompson, right? So it's not like he's going up against a Matthews or, one of the upper echelon elite centers, a big, strong veteran that is going to be tough for him. I think that's a place where he can dominate, even though he's not supposed to be a number one center. He could really show that, look, this isn't just a gimmick. Like, I really can play up and down the lineup here, and I can be a first-line center and dominate. So I'd like to see him do that, and I think Tkachuk and Connor Brown with him, it's a great line.
All right, I like your reasoning for that. I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction. You're taking a top-line player. I'm going with the best to ever lace him up, Tyler Ennis, the former Buffalo Sabre, who had his best years with the team. You might recall the last time these two teams met, the kid had a hat trick. So why not stay hot, Tyler Ennis? And not only did he have a hat trick, there were some highlight reel goals involved in that game as well. So I'm going to go with Tyler Ennis. We'll see if the Sens can get some more depth scoring from the depths of the fourth line. And if they can, I think this one's going to be a nice victory for the Senators. Not like I said the other night where I was
3-1 win.
I was hoping, I was praying. But, if you're the Ottawa Senators, yeah, this lineup is still not maybe what it could be with the guys who are out of the lineup still, but you're not playing against one of those top teams. Like, you made more of a micro note about not having like an elite talent, the whole team either. I think this is a really winnable game for the Sens, and one that they should win. I don't care that it's on the road. I don't care that all those guys are out. This is a winnable game here. Of course, we're going to be watching Brandstrom as well, continuing to quarterback the top power play unit. He's got 2 multi-point games in the NHL. Both came when Thomas Chabot was out of the lineup. Most recently, his 2-assist performance in the Senators game against the St. Louis Blues. So we'll be locked on to all that. Let us know on Twitter. Reply to the tweet here that we put out with the episode. Let us know who your locked on player is for tonight's game. And this is how the opponent lines up. It's Tage Thompson between Jeff Skinner and Alex Tuch. Then it's Dylan Cousins between Peyton Krebs and Victor Olofsson. The third line of Cody Eakin between Asplund and Okposo. And then Jankowski between Anders Bjork and John Hayden. On defense, it's Dahlin and Joki Harju. It's Samuelson and Fitzgerald and Bryson and Pissick. And then in goal, we already talked about it, Craig Anderson. Pilsy, what's your first impression looking at this line combo?
I mean, it's young. Like, this is such a young team, and this is coming from an Ottawa Senators fan and podcast. But I'll say it again. The thing you need to look at here is look at that center depth. Like, none of those centermen are really intimidating if you're the Ottawa Senators. And let's not pretend that the Ottawa Senators have the best center depth in the league either. But I think it's a beatable team up the middle. It's like Thompson, Cousins, very young players. Eakin, more of a veteran, and his performance in the faceoff dot is actually pretty good. And then Jankowski, another kind of younger guy. So I really think the Senators, if I'm going keys to victory, Ross, it's got to be in the faceoff dot. I'll say it again, because the Buffalo Sabres are coming in dead last, 32 out of 32 in faceoff win percentage. And if the Senators can win these faceoffs and have puck possession, this team chasing them is going to struggle. So I think the faceoff battle is going to be a major factor of who wins this game. And it's been proven, Ross. The 5-0 win, the Senators dominated in the faceoff dot. When they lost 3-1, the Sabres, I wouldn't say dominated, but they won the faceoffs battle. So I think that's a telling sign for who's going to win this game. And I want the Senators to show. And Tim Stützle, coming off a 7 for 10, 70% night in the dot last game. Let's keep that going here up against Dylan Cousins.
I think this probably would roll right into the reason for it with faceoffs not going their way, but the Buffalo Sabres give up more shots than any team not named the Columbus Blue Jackets per game. They're averaging almost 35 shots against per game. So if you're Ottawa, everything on net. No disrespect to Craig Anderson, but that's the best way to beat them is just get absolutely everything on goal, crash the crease. Their D, not too worried about them when it comes to boxing out either. Matthias Samuelson's a big kid. Fitzgerald's a big kid. But beyond that, especially that top pair, like they're not intimidating at all.
No.
Like Dahlin's a magician with the puck, great on breakouts. So don't give him time and space. And call me old school, but if they finish their checks a little harder on the Dahlins, the Skinners, the Tucks, the Krebs, I'm not going to be upset based on what happened last time these two teams played. But I don't think there's going to be any fireworks at the same time. You?
No, I don't think so. Like Aaron Dell's not even here. And to be honest, I don't think these Sabres guys want to stand up for Aaron Dell. You know what I mean? Like, why would they? Like this guy's like your fifth stringer. He's down in Rochester now. I don't think any of them are like, we need to make sure we defend Aaron Dell's honor.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Ottawa Senators are like, we need to make sure Aaron Dell knows that we've got his number and we're going to make this team pay. Like I think that story's come and gone, and it's unfortunate because it was Batherson who took the brunt of that, but I doubt we see anything here.
Fair enough. My lookout player is going to be Alex Tuck.
You took mine.
Oh, nice. The timing of this is too easy because Jack Eichel played his first game last night with the Vegas Golden Knights. Alex Tuck, I'll say it, he's the main piece of that trade back. You could say the prospects in Peyton Krebs. You can say all that, but Alex Tuck is still a young, up-and-coming player in the National Hockey League. He's 25 years old, Pillsy. He's entering his prime. He's a Syracuse native. Yeah, the story's nice. He's coming home to the team he cheered for. But how about putting up over a point per game as well? 19 points in 16 games, playing for a brutal team. He comes in on a 4-game point streak, and in those 4 games, Pillsy, he's got 7 points. He's coming off a goal and an assist in Buffalo's last game against the Islanders and a 3-assist performance. Although, do we have to put an asterisk because it was against Montreal? I don't know. I don't know if we do. Yeah, pretty much.
No, that's a great one. And yeah, Alex Tuck was my guy. I think, Ross, the stat that impressed me the most, and I'll give another lookout player, but the stat that impressed me most about Alex Tuck coming to Buffalo, 4 games this season, he's gone without a point. Only 4 games. And I'm pretty sure he's at 16 games or something. So, that's incredible. And not only is he getting points, like there's oftentimes he's having multi-point nights. So Alex Tuck, I think he's where he belongs. The Sabres finally found a guy that they can rally behind here. He signed long-term. So great acquisition for the Sabres.
So it's funny because you could always see the skill with him. He's fast. He's a power forward. He's a great player. Almost like he reminds me a little bit of Drake Batherson, actually. Yeah, great vision, similar right wingers as well. But when you look at what opportunity he's gotten here in Vegas, like last year was his most opportunity. He was averaging 1650. Like that's a second, third line tweener in terms of ice time. Now he's up at 20 minutes and really taking advantage of that extra ice time. So I'm going to be looking out for Alex Tuck. How about you?
Well, Ross, I'm going to be looking out for one of the top scorers on this team. Someone that, if you would have asked me 3 months ago, I would say is on the worst contract in the NHL. Still not a great contract, but he's really improved, and he's on a revenge tour, and that's Jeff Skinner. And we talked about the game up against Montreal. Maybe you put an asterisk on that, but I mean, 4 goals. That's absolutely sick. He had 4 goals, 1 assist, 5 points up against the Montreal Canadiens. Marty St. Louis may be thinking I'll go back to coaching Pee Wee because I'll have better results there. But Jeff Skinner, although he's not what he used to be, you cannot take him lightly because he's such a good skater, and he has one of the best shots in the league when he has time and space to use it. And now I think with that dark cloud of Jack Eichel gone, it's no longer raining all the time in Buffalo. I think they're starting to play a little looser, play with some fun. They got the young guys coming in, taking over. I think we're going to see Jeff Skinner have a resurgence here, so I'm going to be looking out for him, especially on the power play, Ross. This Sabres power play is pretty decent. And look at this top unit: Alex Tuck, Peyton Krebs, Jeff Skinner, Tage Thompson, and Rasmus Dahlin. Like, For a team that doesn't have a lot of depth, they load up on that top power play unit and it can do some damage.
Yeah, I'm completely agreeing with you on that one, man. But and the reason why I'm kind of upset, and you can probably tell my demeanor just dropped there, is because my key to victory is the Senators' power play needs to produce tonight. 3 for their last 37 attempts, Pilsy. That's not going to cut it. And yes, the built-in excuses are there. Their top-end talent is out of the lineup. But seriously, come on. And they got one against St. Louis. So hopefully that's the start of things to come, because they really just can't continue. And they're not going to win games. They've lost 3 of their last 4 all of a sudden. Like, why do you think that is? Well, in those 4 games, they've got 1 power play goal on 13 attempts. So it's a very fine line, and you can draw a lot of comparisons of when the Sens are successful and when their power play is successful as well. They've also given up a power play goal in back-to-back games, and for what's been the top PK in the league in the year 2022, you got to hope that trend ends tonight. But I'm more focused on the power play. I think if the Sens power play scores tonight, Pilsy, they're going to win this game.
Ross, I got good news for you. Ooh. The Buffalo Sabres penalty kill is one of the worst in the league.
Perfect.
At 75.8%. And like we talked about, like you were mentioning, like who's going to like box out, who's going to be a big problem here. Sabres don't have a lot of those guys. And their penalty killing unit, like Eakin, Asplund, and then you got Samuelson, the big guy you were talking about, Jokiharju, like it's not really a shutdown PK unit on their top unit or their second one. So this is where you're going to take advantage of them. Although, Ross, they have one of the greatest penalty killers we've ever seen in Craig Anderson. So when Craig Anderson is on his game, you don't even need to, like, who cares what penalty killing unit you have out there, because he can just shut the door if he wants to. So that'll be interesting to watch.
It's the Ottawa Senators' first visit to Buffalo this season. Both previous meetings were in Ottawa, and they were a week apart. January 18th, Buffalo got a 3-1 win. Drake Batherson, the lone goal scorer for Ottawa in that game, on the power play. Yeah. And for Buffalo, it was Dylan Cousins, Mark Jankowski, and then Alex Tuch scored into an empty netter.
Oh, that Jankowski goal.
Oh, which one was it?
That was the one where there was that massive scrum and no whistle, and then Jankowski strips Josh Brown, gets a breakaway, and scores while the refs are holding on to Senators players, literally grabbing them. Yeah. And that happened, so that's tough. I shouldn't have even brought that up.
Yeah, that's brutal. Here, why don't I change the vibe real quick? The other meeting, a 5-0 victory for the Ottawa Senators on January 25th. Tyler Ennis hat-trick, Drake Batherson, power play goal again, and then Alex Formenton, at the time, his 8th of the season. So the Senators in Buffalo looking to win the season series and move into 6th place in the Atlantic Division. Pilsy, what is your official prediction for tonight's game?
Well, it's going to be... We don't know who's playing goal for the Senators. We assume it's going to be Gustafsson, though. So I'm going to say it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think Andy puts extra oomph onto this game, and I'm going to say Sabres win 3-2 in OT.
3-2 in overtime?
Overtime.
Whoa. I'm going to say 5-2 Senators. No offense, Craig, but I think the Senators offense is going to come to play tonight. I'm going to go 5-2.
You think so? No Norris, no Batherson,
5-2.
No
5-2.
I mean, anytime Austin Watson gets back into the lineup, yeah, that offense is kicking right back up.
I called the Tim Stützle goal the other night. I'm calling Connor Brown tonight. Only 1 goal in 18 games against the Buffalo Sabres in his career. So Connor Brown tonight. You had Nick Paul as your locked on player. Connor Brown He's also been playing some unbelievable hockey. I want to say he's got multi-point games.
He's got a lot of assists lately. Yeah.
In back-to-back. Sorry, no points against St. Louis, but 2 points against Washington. And then the Sens didn't score the 2 previous games, but then had an assist against Carolina as well. So you know what? I'm going all the way back to the Sens 8-2 win in Florida.
Okay.
Connor Brown's got 11 points in his last 11 games. So that's point per game where I come from, Pills. So let's see that continue. And his ice time has been over 20 minutes in his last 5 games. Each of his last 5 games. 23 minutes, 20, 23, 25.
Yeah, that was a game high. 25 minutes. Sheesh.
Yeah, so let's see more of that from Connor Brown. 5-2 win tonight for the Ottawa Senators, in my mind. Tell us we're idiots on the postcast, where you can join us each and every Senators game. And you can subscribe on the YouTube channel to know exactly when we go live. Please click the like button. It's super easy to do. It goes a long way for us. And subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Spotify just introduced a rating system. Go give the boys a 5 stars. Again, it takes 2 seconds. It's absolutely free, and it goes a long way for us. And we appreciate everyone listening, making us your first listen of the day. We're free and available everywhere that you get your podcast, Monday through Friday. Have a great day, everyone. We'll chat in the postcast. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.